focus on your content creation. There's not a lot of businesses where I wouldn't recommend it. Just numbers alone aren't going to take you to a position of scaling. Like every time I watch Friends again and again and again, like I pick something else up. There's always something else in there that you can bring out depending on what situation you're in. Yeah, I think, metrics can tell you a story. Metrics can paint a picture, but they don't apply context. They don't understand people. They don't understand direction or future plan or focus. I'll work with brands on creating their overall business plan with them and then creating their marketing plan from that. Your goal isn't to appeal to as many people as possible. The goal is to appeal to that right demographic.
Welcome to The Business Game, a podcast that moves the needle. Hey guys, before we get started today, we just want to take a quick moment to thank one of our sponsors, TrafTrack. If your traffic control, construction, or security crews are still juggling manual check-ins, scheduling, and resource deployment, you're leaving productivity on the table. TrafTrack's app automates shift assignments and timesheets in seconds. Visit traftrack.com to see why over 1,000 industry professionals rely on it every day. And thanks again to TrafTrack for supporting The Business Game. Hi everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm Jazmyn.
And I'm Dan.
And we are joined today by Lauren. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you so much for having me. My name's Lauren Oakes. I'm a fractional CMO and business coach, and most recently have been the CEO of a digital agency in Australia. I exited the company about a month ago.
That's amazing. It's like such a fresh new chapter, and we're so excited that this is your first appearance.
This is my first launch out of it. It's very exciting.
It's awesome. Well, I can't wait for you to tell us all about the next chapter and what's coming up for you. We're going to touch a little bit today on all of your experience across the last 10 years and what it looks like in the future. So I guess I want to start, though, with who was Lauren Oakes before you had this big, beautiful, successful career?
Before I entered this career, I was actually in New York. I was working in a digital analytics company. I was, I think, really, really excited to be in the industry, but New York is such a fast-paced industry. Everyone wants to be there. It was really rough. You're on minimum wage. You're still working longer than full-time hours. And so it was a really sort of rude awakening, I think, into the industry in New York. But I still loved absolutely every second of it. Before then, I'm from New Zealand originally, which I have a bit of an accent still, which you might be able to tell. So before then, living in New Zealand in a town outside of Wellington, I always had really big dreams, always wanted to do something different. I think, I decided that New York was the place to go because it was the biggest thing that I could think of.
Of course, the Big Apple.
And I think that that's really spearheaded my career from there as well, going from really small, seeing really big, and then sort of ending up back in Melbourne is where I live now. So it's been an interesting journey throughout those different locations, starting from somewhere quite small. But I always had a really strong mindset for business. Even when I was a kid, I was coming up with like weird little businesses and things I could sell to my friends, like sherbet, or I think the worst one I did was painted rocks.
Oh, profitable?
Always.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't buy anything back then.
Sure.
Very profitable. But then even through just like little businesses of selling like gift cards throughout my like teenage years to like fund different school trips I wanted to go on. So I always had a very like entrepreneurial mindset, always wanted to do something. I learned later in life I have ADHD, and so that's probably why I just always had to be doing something else.
It's kind of, it's a superpower if you utilize it in the right way.
Oh, 100%. I went through the whole process with ADHD and told them how I run my life, to-do list, checklist, everything, and basically we're like, yeah, great, that's what we'd suggest. Awesome.
Wow. How did you end up in New York from New Zealand? What was that period?
I'd done an exchange previously in America, met a friend over there, and we basically just made a promise to each other that we would live in New York. So I went back, finished my degree, and we stayed true to that promise. And we ended up back in New York, no money. We booked 3 days in a hotel when we first got there. And that was 3 days for us to find a job and find an apartment to live in.
Wow.
Day 2, we got a job. Working at the Australian bar was the first thing I did there. And then day 3, we found an apartment. It was a cute little apartment, but we were sharing a bed, moved in the next day. And yeah, we made everything work. She actually did the night shifts at the bar. I was more day. And so she was sleeping through the day when I wasn't there. So we had a bit of a system going on. But yeah, it wasn't long until I landed the digital analytics job in New York, which was a step in the right direction for my career.
That's amazing.
So for university was not New York, it was in New Zealand?
Yes,
Yeah.
University was in New Zealand. I studied industrial design and marketing at university. So I really sort of had that passion for the creative element of things, problem solving, how things works and how things work. And that's, I think, where the industrial design gave that. But either way, I still ended up back in marketing.
So in New York, how'd that go? Well, like, did you end up being there for a few years before you moving back?
So as a New Zealander, it's a little bit difficult to stay longer. Well, difficult, expensive, not guaranteed, to get another visa. So I left after, I think it was like 12 or so months in New York, and that's when I ended up back in Melbourne.
Nice.
So what do you think have been the biggest highlights of your career? Can you give us a little highlight run before we get into the problem solving?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of highlights, like a lot of awards that have won. There's being named on Deloitte's fastest growing companies was really awesome. I've won Female Executive of the Year three times in a row. All of those are great, but I think those are the things where I go home and I feel really good about myself. I think it's the wins that I've had with brands or with people that I've worked with. Coaching someone or working with someone and then having them land their dream job. That's amazing. And then, following them throughout that and seeing how well they do, or having someone that you've worked with start their own business and have that succeed. Seeing brands that have started their business in their garage and now they have a warehouse. Those are the wins that I really love. And that's why I love marketing, because you have that ability to really change someone's future with the way that you can market their product.
Yeah, I'm constantly surprised by how make or break it is. You can have so many other things going for you, but without the marketing, there's so much risk of everything falling flat.
100%. It's such an important part for a business as well. And, obviously you need to have a great product, but how you position that product or how you sell it, that's what's ultimately going to make the difference.
So it sounds like it's almost some life coaching, business coaching for individuals, like I assume, and businesses, obviously.
Yeah.
Is that why you decided to make the next step and go out on your own?
I think the decision to leave Megaphone was, in my mind, I just always had 10 years as this milestone. I wanted to be there for 10 years. But it ended up being a bit of a personal decision and professional decision as well. Personally, like, we're going through IVF at the moment, and going through that and then also showing up every day to be the CEO that leads the company and is, always on, always ready to go, that can be really challenging. And, I backed myself that I was able to do that, but I think, there'd be days where I'd just get home and be absolutely exhausted. And, my priorities weren't very clear in that scenario. And then professionally, the company had gone through a sale 18 months ago. I actually had my daughter Piper the same week that the company was acquired. That was the busiest week ever. I think I remember sending a text message. I was in early labor and someone was like, hope you can finish your full labor. I will be, because I think it's happening. So I cut that one a little bit fine, I think.
Definitely.
But yeah, so I think the company has gone through a sale. It's now owned by a global company. We're one of many agencies they own. And so it was just taking a bit of a different direction than previously, when I had been the one to lead the company, make all the decisions, and, be the one that decided where it ended up.
Yeah, that's a massive change to undergo. Did you anticipate that kind of redirection? Was that on the cards?
It was a little bit unclear. And so I think for me, I wanted to give it enough time as well to sort of see where things would be going. But I think ultimately the combination of like personal and, where I want to go, my role had kind of been moved away from helping businesses and the marketing aspect of it, and had been more, focused on more of like a corporate level CEO position, where it was, about the direction of the company, sort of figuring out where we wanted to be within that, global picture. The options just weren't as large as when it was just me leading. So, yeah, ultimately, I think it was the perfect timing.
Yeah, I'm sure of it. It always happens that way.
Still scary, but
Absolutely. You've seen so much success through other founders, though, throughout your work. So I'm sure that you've got many success stories that you can kind of lean on for that, hope going forward. Yeah.
100%.
We're speaking past tense about your experience in another company, but I guess in terms of the biggest year of revenue that you've seen inside of that company, can you talk us through the strategic levers that you might have pulled to sort of get there?
Yeah, we actually had an interesting time through sort of that COVID period, which I kind of hate, labeling it that. But anyway, we noticed that within, what would have been like March, April 2020, we lost about a third of our business within a 2-week period. And internally, the leadership team, we're having conversations around what does this mean? What should we do? There are a small few things that we did short term to put us in a safe position, but ultimately our biggest decision through that period was, do we cut marketing? Marketing for us as an agency, we created a lot of content, we ran a lot of ads, and that sort of positioned us as different in the market. And so throughout that, it was the conversation of, do we cut costs now? Do we save our revenue? Do we cut our marketing? Or do we double down? We doubled down. And we took the approach that, great companies will make it through whatever the landscape is. And so by doing that, and also I think seeing the change in the industry as well, within another few weeks from that, we'd actually seen us regain all that lost business. And then the industry itself just started booming from there. So I think within an 18-month period, we had tripled in size. Wow. That was staffing, but also client number as well. Such an interesting period looking back. I think my biggest memory of that time was me just like interviewing every single person I could to try and like keep up with the growth that we had. We launched 2 other offices throughout that period as well. We also then launched in the UK throughout that period, launched, our TikTok offering, our website offering. There were so many things that we just went all in. We wanted to continue testing. We didn't want any sort of challenges to get in the way of us being an industry thought leader or, being the most innovative in the space. And so that really saw that growth throughout that time. So stressful, but it really shaped the future for the business.
And I assume that's been sustained since COVID?
There was a natural decline after, I think, that e-commerce boom. So coming out of 22, 23, I think that was a bit of a drop-off for e-commerce brands. There were a lot of dropshipping businesses that launched throughout that period that sort of fell by the wayside after that. Naturally that sort of evened out afterwards.
On hiring and leadership, talk us through a funnel that works and how to interview, how to vet, anything you think makes a real impact on outcomes.
Hiring is something, as I was just saying, like through that period, my role went from marketing and, leading a team to hiring. And I was interviewing, 10 people a day throughout that period. So I really feel like I fine-tuned that skill set. But for me, I'm always attitude first and then skills. And so my process for interviewing is starting with an interview which really gets to understand who they are and are they going to fit in with the culture? Are they going to fit in with you? If you're going to be the person working with them closely, you need to be able to have that, coherency between your skill sets. So my first interview would always be a culture-based interview. And so that would be, I always like to, within the first 5 minutes, try and break their guard down, make them feel comfortable. When someone comes in and they're just absolutely stressed, you're not going to get a good interview out of them. So how do you, say something, even if it's self-deprecating or something to kind of soften that a bit. And so through that, I try and just have that as a conversation. I want to know about them. If I can see that they're uncomfortable, I'll ask a question that is so simple that they can comfortably answer that and feel good about themselves so that I can then go into another question to dig deeper. So that first interview is very important for me to see if they're going to actually fit in with the team. And with my previous company, the culture was so strong. That was one of the things that set us apart in the industry. And so that was so important. The next interview would be a skill-based interview. I would always have the person that is closest to that skill set, or the person running that team with that skill set that you need, do that interview. Make sure that they actually can perform those tasks. But following that, always having just an example of work. If you can do that in person, then that's great. I've done various things. Some of them have been take-home exercises if they're larger, if we're hiring for, a head of department or something. Whereas if you're hiring for like a media buyer or, a marketer, you can actually get them to do something in person. You can get them to run through a current account, talk through it. You can ask questions. And that way you can actually see them performing the actual role. I think there's nothing worse than hiring someone and the first time you see them perform the role is after you've committed to them. So that would be my typical process for hiring someone.
So the initial interview would be online most of the time, or in person where possible?
If you can do in person. Depends on the scale of hiring. If you're hiring high volume, then that first interview, that can be virtual. Or you could even look at it as the other way. Do that first interview in person if possible, and then the skill ones can more be virtual from there. If you're not hiring a huge amount of people, try and get them in person. I think if the role is going to have an in-person element to it, speaking to people or sales or clients, then in person is so important. If they are actually going to be working remotely, then.
Can you share with me or us the most horrific hire and also the best hire where they've gone?
And maybe what the signals were in the interviewing process when you look back.
Was there any red flags that you kind of skipped past and you should have picked up on?
Yes. I'm just trying
First
to think if I can share this one.
Maybe got none. Maybe it's been perfect hiring all the way through.
No, there's definitely been some challenges. I think when we hire wrong, and we do hire wrong, people can get through those interviews and still somehow not have the right skill set. I think the worst, definitely the worst that we did was we had our original sales manager who'd been there, I think about 4 years, leave to start his own business. He's doing great now, so very happy for him. And we decided to replace him with someone who had a lot more experience. So this is someone that, probably double the experience that our previous one had. Came into the role, and I think because he had more experience than me, more experience than anyone in the team, we just held that skill that he had in such high regard that we kind of ignored the cultural element of it. And I think within the first few hours, just presence, the way the meetings were held, the way people were spoken to, it was just off. I think 3 weeks is what we went through, which was probably honestly 2+ weeks too long. But we made that call to just terminate the role. It was a leadership role, so it's really hard to do that. There's instability in the team. Their favorite manager has just left, and then you've brought someone else in that they hate, and now you're going to terminate the person without anyone else in the woodworks for them. So that was really difficult. And I think it's not the impact that it has on the business results, it's the people. And if you're creating instability in the team, then the output from that person is going to be a lot different. So that was actually, I was so afraid of that instability that I jumped into the head of sales role at that point. Minimal experience in that. Read a couple of books over the weekend and jumped in on Monday. But that was probably one of the best things I've ever done. Is from that bad hire, it pushed me into the sales side of things. I've had so much learning in that area, even just through human conversation or persuasion, that's something that's important in relationships and any form of conversation. So as much as it was a bad hire, it was actually a great positive outcome for me.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Best hire though. I had an intern called Paris who we had in for a few months and decided to hire her as a junior in the team. And she's still there today. She must be coming up 8 years there. And she's in one of the highest leadership positions.
Amazing.
So when I was talking about success stories from me, that to me is something that is a huge success story. I worked with her really closely throughout the first year or two that we were working together. We shared clients. She took over my clients. And yeah, she's incredible. So that's something that, I feel really positive about.
And I think you should, because that's an incredible reflection on both you and the company, that an intern was able to find their feet and enjoyed the role and the culture enough to stay on to progress their career. That's a really exciting thing to look back on, for sure.
Yes, especially for 8 years.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, we even did I remember a cultural induction. We invited her to one of our work gatherings to see how she'd fit into the team. Absolutely seamless. So she, came on board.
Perfect. I love that juxtaposition, just cementing the culture over skill set necessarily.
Yeah. And like when you're hiring an intern, it's obviously a much junior skill set. So you're hiring for their attitude. And like 100%, that was one of the best hires we've made.
That's awesome. So let's talk about ROI in terms of client performance. Which operational process at Megaphone moved the needle most for client ROI?
So Megaphone throughout the years, primarily marketing agency. What we've noticed over the past couple of years, though, is that we've needed to take a step back from marketing metrics and focus on business and operational metrics. So because the cost of marketing, cost of advertising has increased significantly, 3-4 times perhaps in the past 5 years, you actually need to have quite a lean or streamlined business to be able to see that, or a high volume of sales. So what we're noticing is that when businesses are seeing this increase in cost, there's more pressure put back on the agency to perform more and get more sales. But we kind of needed to take that approach to look into the business and understand, where are your margins, where are your fixed costs, where are your variable costs sitting? Are they viable for where you're currently sitting? What volume of sales do you actually need to be profitable? And breaking that down for them. There's a lot of businesses that have seen a lot of success or got to a certain point, but haven't actually dug into all of those metrics and been able to understand why they're there or where they should be. So being able to break that down for them, show them that, in some situations it would mean that they actually needed to go back and reduce their fixed costs. They're paying wages that are far too high, or, their rent is for a massive building that they don't need. And then in other situations, they are lean, they can't cut anything. So that shows us that we need to be trying to scale that business. And, when they hit a certain number of sales, they're going to be perfectly profitable. And so that's sort of where the strategies from our approach would change if we know the internal operations of that business. And so that's the approach that I would take now as well. I would never work with a business if I wasn't able to see what things look like internally for them, to make sure that they're in a position that they actually can see success. And I think that's when I was mentioning about that drop-off post-COVID. I think that sort of, as soon as people were able to shop in other ways, they just didn't have that structure within the business.
Within that, how much physical marketing still exists offline? Were you involved in any of that? Yeah,
so not as much. So we'll do like digital out-of-home and digital placements through digital billboards. But it's more, our focus was more digital. I think that businesses need to be at a certain size before they should start investing in platforms like that. The cost for placements across billboards, or if you want to go trams or buses or whatever, it's very high. And so you need to be a business where you're confident that you're going to see that, or you're happy to invest that just as an awareness point, so that then your digital can be a bit more trackable.
Can you give us an example of a marketing strategy or a campaign that you were involved in that you thought was very successful and maybe different to normal, traditional?
Yeah. A recent one that we worked on was the relaunch of American Apparel. So they actually did a combination of various like out-of-home strategies as well, which was really successful. So everyone knows the name American Apparel, and I think being able to bring it back to the market, because I think it was out for like 5 years or so. Don't quote me on that. But, our strategy was to relaunch this business, which had actually been, adjusted through that period, and sort of bring it back into the market, create a target demographic for that. And so a lot of what we've done through that strategy, I keep saying we, a lot of what was done throughout that strategy was to sort of reposition it in the market and re-bring it back in. And that's why we did go outside of just digital for that because we wanted it to be sort of all-encompassing for them. But that's been really exciting to work on a relaunch strategy. I love working on launches of brands, being able to, from the get-go, create that target demographic and that demand within that market. It's very, very exciting.
And that's so going in ground zero, how did you measure success for that campaign?
It's challenging. And I think that's probably one of the hardest questions that agencies get is, what will I get from this? But, you have industry benchmarks. You know where you should be sitting. You also know what you're inputting into marketing. And you know that, like, when you are launching from scratch, you know exactly what you're spending and where those sales are coming from. So it is easy in that sense to track that we put in X and we got out Y. When you are working with a brand that's been around for a while, if you tweak different things, it's hard to actually understand what part of that is working.
Okay. Nice.
Best metric is just happy client.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately everything that we track, or ultimately everything that I would track now is outside of the platforms. I would optimize campaigns within the platforms using those metrics. However, there's double reporting across things like Google and Meta. So if you can take all those metrics outside of the platform and you actually just look at the sales that you're getting every single day, understand what goes in and what comes out, and making sure that what's coming out is at a profitable rate for you, that's where I would measure success rather than within a platform.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So coming from that background and now you're stepping into something new, can you share a little bit about what your future plans are with what you're doing next?
Absolutely. So rather than working, on a large portfolio of brands within an agency, I'm focusing on a handful, 5 or 6 brands that I can actually be involved in digging into the numbers of the business, understanding where they sit and how we can actually scale that business in the market. So it's I guess a fractional CMO role. So for businesses that don't need to have a chief marketing officer as part of their team, but would like to have that bigger picture direction from someone. So I'll work with brands on creating their overall business plan with them, and then creating their marketing plan from that. And so that will be what platforms they're using, what's their content strategy. Some brands that I work with are, they've already got a lot of that, and so it's just tweaking it. Other brands are on the smaller scale, and it's creating that entire plan for them. And throughout the past 10 years, I have also been doing a lot of business coaching with various businesses. I think it's more focusing on coaching the person to get the most out of them, for them to get the most out of their business, rather than just focusing on the business.
A lot of mindset shift things.
100%. And I think, like, when you're in the day-to-day of your own business, you get tunnel vision. It's so hard to get out of it. I've had it. And just having someone step in from that fresh perspective and giving you a reality check if you need it, giving you some alternatives. My favorite thing is just problem solving. And so I get so much enjoyment of just working with different businesses or different founders and being able to help provide some of those solutions for them.
You know what I want to highlight within your answer there as well is that you're someone who came from a numbers background. You've been involved in analyzing data through your whole career. And yet I think a lot of people would kind of dismiss the things such as mindset as almost a soft skill. You're someone that has that background in being able to measure metrics, and yet you still value that as a really important tool. So yeah, I find that really refreshing. We don't get answers like that all the time.
Yeah, I think, metrics can tell you a story. Metrics can paint a picture, but they don't apply context. They don't understand people. They don't understand, direction or future plan or focus. And so I think, like, you need them to support what you're doing and to make sure everything is going to be sustainable in that. But once you've got that, just numbers alone aren't going to take you to a position of scaling. There's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of, planning and thinking that goes around that, which you can't just get from numbers.
Absolutely. Hear, hear. Hey guys, just wanted to do a quick shout out to our affiliate partner, OpusClip. If you need great video edits without hiring an editor, their AI engine turns your raw clips into share-ready content in under a minute, no skill required. Find our link in the description to support our show and get a great sign-up bonus. Create more, stress less with OpusClip.
For a business owner or CEO or anyone in leadership position in business, are you able to provide some specific tips to start looking at their marketing strategies? And then at what point should they contact you? Say, I need some help.
Things that I would suggest for businesses, I think like my biggest tip at the moment is focus on your content creation. There's not a lot of businesses where I wouldn't recommend it. You know, whether you're an e-commerce brand, whether you're a service brand, you know, maybe other than like, I don't know, emergency plumbers or, you know, something where it's like an only on demand basis. But regular service or e-commerce businesses, having your own form of content gives you a voice, it gives you a position in the market, it gives you something to stand for. But at the moment, through Instagram, through TikTok, you can put content out there, or through LinkedIn as well. You can put content out there and you will get exposure and reach for free. You know, I work with a brand that might spend, you know, 10 grand a month on marketing and you get, I don't know, maybe 100,000 impressions with that. You could post 10 TikToks and get that as well. You know, it's understanding that you can actually get a lot for not much input. And I think the level of content that brands can create, it's simply talking to camera. It's showing them what you're doing. It's digging into the ins and outs of your business. I think getting over that initial hurdle of filming the content is hard. And then once you're there, it's easy to start to just get a little bit more comfortable with it. You know, I went through that journey several years ago when starting to create content. But it's something where you can actually change the shape of your business without actually paying for it. And if you are investing in marketing, you should be investing in the content side of things, because that's where you can start to find your new audiences there and then hone in on those through marketing spend. And I mean, when you're running ads, you need an endless supply of content. And the way that the platforms are going at the moment, you know, we have demand gen campaigns through Google, which is primarily focusing on video and images. We have, you know, Andromeda, which has been launched through Meta, which is primarily focusing on much more content designed to much broader audiences. You really need to have that constant supply of content. When I work with brands and that's the thing that you are held back on, it is really difficult. So I think that would be my biggest tip for businesses.
It's hard work.
It is.
Creating content is really hard. I run a few businesses now and I hate it. I always hated it.
But you set yourself up in a way that, in a place that you feel comfortable. I think what I would always find hard is like finding the perfect backdrop where there's not like random toys in the background or something. But like I now have I have an area where I know that there and there is good lighting. Everything's fine. I actually bought a light off Amazon, and like these lights. And that makes it a whole lot easier because I'm not trying to like find the light or anything.
That's how you know the startup's getting real. You buy the good
Yeah,
lighting.
bought the lighting.
Yeah.
So I think like just set yourself up for success. I'm someone who likes to prepare for the content as well. So I would even go to the point of writing bullet points on what I would like to talk about. And if you can batch it, then that's great. You know, if you get yourself in a position that you're comfortable with and you can just get 10 done, you know, that could be 5 weeks of content right there. Depends what type of content you're filming. But anyway.
I was going to say, I think we have to be so careful in this conversation because some other founders listening might hear this quantity conversation and then just think, well, AI can spit out a bunch for me. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on AI for content, I think there's been a huge increase on the number of posts since ChatGPT is launched. And you can tell when there's a LinkedIn post that's been written by ChatGPT. It's got really long sentences. It has like triple commas in it. We've got M dashes everywhere. We've got emojis. I don't know if I would necessarily consider that content. You know, we're all aware that it's AI now. So by all means, use AI for the first 80%, but go through it, make it you, make it have an opinion, make it have, you know, something that you stand for in it. Video content, I know you can also do AI video content as well. I was targeted with an ad the other day that I knew was AI, but it was so close to not being AI. So I think that's probably an interesting talking point as well. You know,
was it the six fingers that gave it away, or?
This was actually really good.
Mm.
So I think because I've spent a lot of time in AI, I can see it. I don't know if a lot of people would see that. So that's interesting as well. I still back an actual person doing it and having that opinion. But, talk to me in 6 months' time. I might have a different opinion if that's improved.
Do you think there's going to be any uptick in content that is even a little sloppier so that people are able to differentiate it? Like the humanizing element that we've seen in trends for the last decade or so, but kind of in a different direction.
Yeah, I think, AI content they have trouble showing like high emotions and low emotions. So potentially, showing that or having, a way that you speak, I use my hands a lot. That's something that, AI might not replicate from the way they do it. So I think always creating really personal content that is purposeful and, meaningful to you. That's something that I don't think AI can do right now. So just try and do something that sets yourself apart. But my advice for that is the same for any brand anyway. You should be doing that to set yourself aside from someone else.
Do you have any favorite platforms, whether it's advertising or AI or apps? Any tips for preferred softwares?
For learning or for where I get my knowledge or learning from, I would say LinkedIn. I just make sure I have a really curated feed on following different people that I like that post content. I appreciate that on LinkedIn at the moment we're getting more and more videos. And so I'm interested to see where LinkedIn goes in the next 6 or 12 months because it is turning into a place where you can get kind of that higher level education that you don't really get from Reels or TikTok. So I really I like what's happening on LinkedIn. And that's also part of my strategy now is LinkedIn videos and having them vertical rather than horizontal.
Yeah, but advertising softwares?
Softwares that I use, there's a couple of great ones that I've used, like Landing Site AI to create landing pages, Jasper AI. Jasper AI is really good at if you're creating content for a brand or writing ad copy, which I have been doing, you can put in all the information about the brand, their tone of voice, you can plug in all the articles, their website, everything that they've done, and then it will help you write content in their tone of voice. So that is really helpful for brands that, potentially are just going to ChatGPT to use. This is a better version of that, harder to tell.
Okay, great.
But I think the biggest tip that I would have for AI would be just create really good prompts. I think what we see when people are posting on LinkedIn and you can see straight through that it's ChatGPT is they just haven't prompted right. You need to tell it what tone of voice you speak in. Are you quite casual? Do you want to be very personal in your approach? What position are you in your company? What audience are you targeting? Who do you want to speak to? Prompt all of that out and don't prompt it every time. Prompt it out, save it. And then use that at the start of everything that you write. Okay. For me, if I'm using it for something, I'll still only use it for 80%. But, I don't like the way it uses a lot of bullet points or emojis or em dashes or anything like that. So I've got all of that specified in it. I think another important thing to add in is if you don't know the answer, please don't make one up because it will make up answers. So that way you'll know at least there's going to be no random opinions that don't exist in something that you're putting together.
Well, it's either that or it pulls all the information from one particular website and you go, it's
well, yeah, someone wrote something one time and
it's just completely duplicated.
Which is why I use Perplexity. You get the articles that it's used at the top, and so you can do a quick scan and are they reputable sources? You can actually ask it to use more reputable sources in your answer as well. Or has it used the same source, or is it like the same website, just different pages? So that will give you a good idea. And then if I am using Perplexity for an exact topic that I need to make sure it's accurate, you've got all the sources there to go through and make your own opinion on it. So it takes a bit more time. Doesn't take as much time as if you were doing the entire research yourself, but it takes a bit more time. But at least if somebody reads something you've written, you can back it that you believe it and that it's true and that it sounds like it's you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Great tip. Yeah.
Speaking of sources, fantastic segue. I'm really curious, as someone who has been in a leadership position for so long, but also has that marketing brain, what is your kind of news and media diet? What do you turn to?
LinkedIn is my LinkedIn is my biggest one, to the point where
Not sponsored.
to the point where I had to delete the LinkedIn app for my vacation that I'm on right now. Doing really well, not working. Yeah, to the point where I just end up on it constantly. You know, I follow a lot of business owners or different pages that share great content. And so my feed is curated well to a point now where I can go there and get everything.
Shout any of them out?
Oh, Dara Denny is great. She's an American creative genius, I would say. So on the content train that I was talking about, she actually shares a lot around types of content that's working. She did an interesting video on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago where she was facing the other way in the video and just talking like normal but backwards. I never actually got into why it was, but I assumed it was just to see, you know, I looked at it, I watched it like 4 times and tried to understand why it was. And I imagine the engagement on that post would have been, you know, 10 times what it would be on another post. So she does a lot of creative testing herself, but then she shares those answers with everybody. There's no gatekeeping. And so you're getting all of that knowledge firsthand, and really short, easy videos to watch. I think she also got a course as well, but yeah, it's really good. She does YouTube as well.
Creative testing. Yeah, that's okay.
I think like if you're going to be, you know, I don't know exactly what a job title is, creative, whatever, you know, you need to be showing that you're actually working in your field like that. So I think she's doing an amazing job.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's changing so quickly, and it just does. It seems like every day you can wake up and there's a new way that you should be approaching marketing on socials.
100%. And there's the platforms will come out and say what you should be doing, but it's the testing that really helps brands. And I think things are so different depending on what level of ad spend you're spending. So to be able to understand what other people are doing and what they're getting out of it is great. But I think also for me, I think this would probably be relevant to anyone in the marketing spaces. Agency owners are all creating great content now. So I follow a majority of the agency owners around Australia to understand their opinions on launches. So when a media platform will do their new product launch, you've then got all these opinions, so you can start to understand what people are thinking about it, what's working for them. So that's been really helpful for me as well.
I guess the other aspect to that is, how do you stand out? Where everyone's doing the same thing and where people give tips and you go through your LinkedIn profiles and everyone's doing the same, whether it's AI or just blogging sort of thing. How do you stand out? How do you make a difference where someone's going to go, oh yeah, I'm going to spend the extra, what's the average time on a social media post? 10 seconds?
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, 7 seconds?
1.6 seconds to stop the scroll.
Yeah.
I think being really clear about who you are and who you're speaking to start with before you start making content, or even if you are making content, take that time to just take that step back and figure out who you're speaking to. What is your target demographic? Because your goal isn't to appeal to as many people as possible. The goal is to appeal to that right demographic. And so even if you use agency owners as an example, each agency has a slightly different niche. You know, they might be more creative, they might be more analytical, they might, you know, create the ads for you, they might not. And so they each have this area where they are going to be, where they're going to, you know, win business in, essentially. And so making sure that you're highlighting who you're speaking to, and then you just really hone in on those points. I think you're not trying to highlight every point of difference to every single person. It's finding the really specific, unique things that you have and sharing those with people. And that's the same with, you know, e-commerce brands. There's probably, you know, hundreds of electric toothbrush companies out there, but they all kind of have a slightly different specialization, and there's room for them all in the market. Yeah.
Now, how about guerrilla marketing? And I've just recently heard of an example of creating conflict in social media to get further attention, further views. What's your thoughts?
I laugh because I created a LinkedIn post and I wrote it off the cuff, didn't think about it, posted it, should have probably thought about it a little bit more. But it was about the M dash and how I'd seen so many in my LinkedIn feed, and I was like, you don't speak like that, you don't use the M dash. So I wrote a post and I was like, I don't want to see this content anymore. I want, you know, your actual opinion. You know, I don't want to see this M dash. And I created massive issues within the M- support group in the world. It actually
I was
went.
waiting for you to say that you put an M dash into your own post.
No, oh God, that would have been worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had copywriters from around the world commenting on this post about like the place of the M dash. But that's my post on LinkedIn with the most engagement.
Yeah.
About a stupid M dash.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So it works. And going through it all, I've actually tried to like respond to a lot of people, but I think like my lesson was like, go out of the box, say something weird, say something different, get people to read it. And I think on LinkedIn, when people are following you, when you post something, it'll pop up in their like updates or notifications, whatever it is that you've posted, and it gives them one line of that LinkedIn post. Make that interesting. If you type, here's what I learned this week, no one cares. But if you write, I don't want to see the M dash, everyone cares about that. So yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, bit of controversy.
Yeah.
Safe controversy.
I was trolled.
Yeah. It's like the most timely controversy to have through. This bloody M dash that just won't let up.
And I called it the Chat GPT dash as well, and that really, really got people going.
So what actually is an M dash? Because I
it's
also
an extra
don't know.
long dash.
Yeah, but what is it for?
It's for like combining two sentences that are like related but separate. I'll probably like
You're going to
done
start
that
it
incorrectly
again.
as well.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe just pop it on the screen. There's three different types of dash for three different purposes, and this is the extra long one that ChatGPT uses.
I'm gonna
it's kind of like an add-on,
Yeah.
like this and then also this.
I'm going to have to find your post and get educated. Yeah.
Can I just touch on the trolling a little bit? Have you, obviously you've come across it a fair bit in your line of work. Is there something that you deal with in a positive way, or is it something that you keep on pushing to make further?
I think when it was through the agency, odd comments, not a huge issue. When it's more personal, to me, it doesn't really, I don't understand why. Like, especially that post on LinkedIn, there were a lot of like hateful people. I'm like, my goodness, how has this caused such a strong negative reaction towards me as a person? So that caught me by surprise, that one. But usually, there's always going to be someone that disagrees with you. I honestly think my best approach is just to not read it, not engage with it.
What are your thoughts on leveraging controversy for marketing? If something does sort of turn into, like if it is as seemingly inconsequential as an M dash post and then you've made more content about that, do you think that that's safe or?
100%. I think that's a great approach to things. And I think also showing the fact that doesn't concern you. I think a good example recently has been Yotpo has gone through a lot of company changes, and that was shared all through LinkedIn. There was a lot of negativity around that, but the way that their team handled that, they all approached it positively. They were all in support of it. They were engaging and commenting on these posts that were so overtly negative about their business, but they stayed really strong. They stayed true to who they were as a company. They backed what their company had done. And so I think that was a great way for them to, it's a really unfortunate situation that they were in, ending email and SMS, I think it was. But they've actually managed to come out, I think, in a really positive light, being able to show really strong stability within the team rather than just staying quiet throughout a time like that.
I was going to go back about you now and push a little bit back about yourself. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask was, what does 24 hours in the life of Lauren Oakes typically look like at the moment, right now?
At the moment, my daughter wakes up at 5 a.m. So I also wake up at 5 a.m. And myself, my husband and her will do breakfast and then we'll go for a walk. I think that's the most important part of the day. I also read somewhere that the first 5 minutes of when your child wakes up and the first 5 minutes before they go to bed and when they get home from something are the most important. So always want to prioritize a really strong morning. But I think the morning walk as well sets me up for a great day. A bit of fresh air, a bit of exercise. We can talk through any problems or anything that's coming up in the day and we enter that really fresh. From there, I'm on holiday right now, so it's been a lot more relaxing than normal. But typically I would jump into a few hours of work if it's a day that I'm not looking after Piper. And I like to get out of the house for work, whether that's co-working or a cafe or, with a friend or working with one of my clients at their spaces. And I'll usually work pretty solidly from about 8 till 4. And from 4, then it's back to Piper time. And she's in bed by 6. And then my husband and I have the evenings to ourselves. We've timed sort of her wake. Her wake is early, but her sleep time is 6 p.m. So we always have dinner together. We can have a glass of wine. We can chat about something, read a book or watch TV, whatever it might be. We have that time to ourselves, whether that's together or doing something differently. So that would be a standard, probably quite boring day in my life.
And how's that compare to 12 months ago?
12 months ago? 12 months ago, it might have been on maternity leave.
Well, I mean, when you're a CEO and you're crazy and busy and nonstop.
So I think before Piper, things were a lot different. I would be trying to get to the office 7:30 in the morning, probably not leaving till about 6:30 p.m. I'm a big fan of working with the team in the office, so I was always in office. And so I think I had a lot more priority put on work. That was I think, the biggest thing that I was focusing on. Whereas now, I do want to have a bit more of that balance. I want to make sure I've got those hours in the morning and those hours in the evening that I can spend with my family.
How are you balancing up that kind of trade-off between parenting and building a company?
It's hard, but I get so much joy from both. So being able to know that I'm still working in the field that I want, still, I love marketing. I love working with brands. And so that's something that just because I had a child, that didn't go away. It just meant that I had another priority added on. So just making sure that I can kind of tick those boxes together, which I'm finding a lot easier now. While I was in the CEO role, it was kind of picking one or the other each day, which is really hard. It's hard if you're getting home too late for bedtime, or like rushing out the door at 5:30 because she's going to go to sleep in 10 minutes. So just, I guess, adjusting those priorities has been really, really big, and being okay with the fact that, it's changed.
So could you walk us through what your actual offerings are that you're serving up for people?
Absolutely. So a fractional CMO role, it looks different in every business. So for example, one business that I'm working with at the moment, she sells a beautiful rechargeable lighter. It's working with her across where is her business currently sitting, where does she want that to be in 12 months' time, and how is marketing going to get there? She's currently stocked in hundreds of stores, but it's the marketing side of things which I think is going to have the ability to change the game for her. So working with her on what does that business plan look like, how does marketing support that? Going into things like stock levels, where are they sitting? Will they support the marketing spend? Digging into her profit margin on products, understanding if we're importing more, does that drop costs? How does that change things? And then applying the marketing plan. So at the moment, it's creating a Black Friday plan in the runway to Black Friday. It's coming up with what type of content do we need, how much content we need, who we're going to be working with for that content. It'll be, what ads are we going to be running? What's our spend across the platforms? What is our sale each day through that sale period? How's it going to be different? How are we targeting all of the demographics within that? It'll be the email marketing plan, SMS marketing plan to go with that. And basically everything that is going to create that for her.
Yeah, wow. And are you a one-man show in this endeavor?
At the moment, yeah.
Yeah. Plans to expand?
Definitely. So at the moment, my plan is just to have that balance. And so working with, maximum of 5 brands, and then being able to have that time that I can spend with Piper. At the moment, I'm, 2 or 3 days a week, Monday to Friday, working on the business, and then the rest with Piper. And I am only a month in to my
early days,
supposed break. and my goal is to just be as slow as possible through this period, and then ramp up when I feel like the time is right. But I think after 10 years just working really solid hours, having this time where I can actually just take a bit of a breather is really important as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, on your website, besides CMO, you also got fractional fractional CEO, and also business coaching. I guess they all kind of a little bit merged together, but at the same time. Can you explain the differences in your offering?
Definitely. So I think some businesses, when they are on a smaller scale, they kind of need that CEO, CMO, and I'm happy to combine that together. That is something where you are working more in the direction of the business with also the marketing side of things. Some businesses are larger, they're, 10, 100 million per year. And so they don't need me to tell them where they're going. It's more the direction of their marketing. And that's just specifically marketing. So removing anything about profit, stock levels, anything like that. It's just focusing on exactly what does that marketing look like. That might be higher level as well. So looking more across what channels will we use, hiring for them as well. Having the best marketing team that you can have is going to mean that you're getting the best marketing. And so that's where I can bring in my hiring expertise as well to a role like that.
So when you're hiring internal staff, or you're talking about hiring agencies?
Hiring,
or a bit of both?
A bit of both. I guess it depends what they have. With one of the businesses I'm working with, they're quite large. And so it would be, the support there is hiring the marketing team to also work with the agency. But others, it would be just internal hiring.
How about working with external teams in terms of offshoring overseas?
I think done well, great. I'm a big fan of just hiring the best person for the job. I think where you get into a sticky situation is hiring the cheapest person for the job. So as long as you're following, a hiring process where you're hiring on, is that person a good fit for the company? Do they have the right skill set? Are they going to be able to perform the job to the best, standard possible? I don't really care where that person comes from.
Okay, so it's applying the same techniques and hiring.
Yeah, 100%. But I think when you get into a situation where you are just finding somebody because they're cheap, and you're replacing, someone in-house for someone who's a quarter of the cost, but maybe a quarter of the quality.
Quarter of the productivity.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. And so making sure that you are actually getting a win out of that, and you are actually, happy to stand behind the work that's being completed, then that's great.
I'm going to put you on the spot, Lauren, for one of our final questions here. Do you have a particular book or podcast that you've enjoyed recently that you could recommend to our audience?
The Business Game.
Oh,
No,
aside from
sorry.
Aside from the Business Game, book that I've read recently. I've reread this book recently. I think throughout this next sort of step in my career, there's been a little bit of uncertainty. I mean, maybe not warranted uncertainty, but just uncertainty because it's the unknown that I'm stepping into. So I reread the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. And so that was the book that originally inspired me to want to push into a C-suite role, or wanted to be a female leader. And I found that really motivating, just to kind of bring me back to why I'm here, why I want to be, creating this myself, and why I want to be working in an area that I truly believe in and that I'm really passionate about as well. So I'm a big fan of, having those books that you go back to when you might be feeling a little bit uncertain. So I would highly recommend that book to anyone, really.
And that's such an interesting contrast that you read it before the last 10 years, and now I suppose it must ring slightly differently this time around.
100%. Even I've probably reread it 5 or 6 times at this point, but every time I read it, it's a different one. It's like every time I watch Friends again and again and again, I pick something else up. There's always something else in there that you can bring out depending on what situation you're in.
I'm like you. I like getting some content from LinkedIn, and specifically when they give us, downloadables where you can read a little bit more. And so, where can we find you? Can we find you on LinkedIn?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah. Lauren Oakes 11 is my LinkedIn name that you can type in to find me. Otherwise, I have a website, laurenoakes.com, and there's contact details on there if you want to email me, if anyone's got any questions. I can help on there. There's also links to all other socials on there.
Great.
Perfect. That makes it super easy, and we'll pop those in the description below.
Amazing.
Lauren, thank you so much for joining us while you're on holiday at that. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, and I'm so keen to follow your journey.
Thank you so much. It's been so wonderful being here. I much prefer an in-person podcast. So I'm so glad that I was up here at this time, and it's a pleasure to be here on my holiday.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. To help support our continued mission to provide free, best-in-class advice from the world's most compelling business leaders, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. See you on Saturday. Thanks for tuning in to The Business Game. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay connected. A big thank you to our major sponsor, TraffTrack, for powering today's episode. And join us again on the next episode of The Business Game, a podcast that moves the needle.